If you're into podcasts, you should check out our podcast, Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. It's about cold cases that were eventually solved. New episodes are released every other week. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. Many ghost stories start with a cabin in the woods, a scary forest, or a haunted mansion. Haunted mansions serve as the perfect location for ghosts. In many cases, they're old. They've had many residents pass through them over the centuries, and, of course, there are plenty of time for tragedies to occur. The following three mansions are no exception. Number 3. Hatley Castle. Canada isn't exactly known for its castles, but there is one on Vancouver Island in Victoria, British Columbia, that seems to have attracted attention and ghosts. Hatley Castle was built in 1908 by James Dunmere. Dunsmuir was a man of privilege, having been born into a cool family. Not only that, but Dunsmuir was once the Lieutenant Governor and Premier of British Columbia. Dunsmuir then used his money to build a glamorous and sprawling mansion. It was initially meant to be a farm with the hunting grounds, but with the expertise of architect Samuel McClure, it turned into a 40-room castle with an 83-foot turret. Ultimately, the castle was to serve as a home for James Dunmere during his retirement. Many people think whoever can afford such luxurious homes will have lived equally blessed lives, but this was not the case for James Dunmere. Dunsmuir experienced a personal tragedy that would stay with him and the castle forever. The beginning of the story starts in 1876, way before the mansion was even built, when Laura Searles married Dunsmuir. Together they had 10 children. There were 8 girls and 2 boys. The youngest boy was Jim, who was also known as Boy. When World War I broke out in 1914, Jim wanted to participate and decided to join the war effort. 21-year-old Jim was on a ship to Europe in 1915, the RMS Lusitania, which was torpedoed by a German U-boat. 1,193 of the 1,960 people on board were killed. Jim's body was never recovered. The death of the youngest child was incredibly difficult for James Dunmere and Laura. Dunmere often played music in his study, and it's reported he would often repeatedly play the record, "Where is My Wandering Boy Tonight?" One day his wife broke the record because she couldn't listen to the song anymore. James Dunmere died in 1920, soon after his youngest son was killed. Many said he died of a broken heart. The Dunsmuirs owned the castle until the late 1930s. The property then went through many hands and served many purposes. It was a Navy training establishment after the Dunsmuirs left. During World War II, it served as a potential location for the British royal family to escape if Germany won the war. The castle was renamed in 1947 to the Royal Canadian Navy, Royal Canadian Air Force, Joint Services College, and then it was changed to the Canadian Services College, Royal Roads. In 1967, it was renamed the Royal Roads Military College. The college closed in 1994 and has since been called the Royal Roads University. With such a long history and so many different people and establishments taking over the castle, we suppose it's no surprise that someone is haunting it. People have reported hearing footsteps and sounds of doors opening and closing. There have been reports of hearing music coming from the study, the same location James would play his record while mourning his son. Could the ghost of James Dunmere still be present and still mourning the loss of his son who never came home and whose body was never recovered? Is it possible that he will wait forever for his body to return? It seems that not only James Dunmere is haunting the hallways of his old mansion, but Laura has her own mission there as well. When the castle was turned into a military college, cadets reported seeing her roam the hallways and looking in the dorm rooms. It would seem she was also searching for Boy, or Jim. Laura didn't only roam the hallways and search the dormitories, but she also somewhat interacted with people. Cadets reported that if Laura couldn't see their faces while they were in bed, she pulled back the sheets to check for Jim. While these two hauntings of parents who lost their son at a young age in a tragic way stayed at the castle, there was also the presence of a ghost of a nanny who actually followed someone home. A visitor recalls visiting Hatley Castle, and when they arrived home from the trip, they heard a baby crying at night. Thinking it was their own baby, the parents entered the child's room only to find the child peacefully sleeping. The crying continued throughout the night with no answer to who it could be. Not only that, but at work, the visitor recalls boxes and equipment falling from high shelves. Slightly freaked out by these occurrences, they sought out the professional opinion of a psychic. The psychic said the spirit who followed them home was a nanny who worked at Hatley Castle. This nanny also died there. We don't know if this is the same person, but there was a report of a maid who jumped from the mansion's 3rd floor and died. She had been left by someone she loved. We're not quite sure what the visitor had to do to rid themselves of the ghost of the nanny's presence. Either way, Hatley Castle is a home that saw tragedy, and that tragedy continued to live there even after the people were long gone. Luckily, no one lives there now. No one likes having someone remove their sheets while they're trying to sleep. Number 2. Raynham Hall. For our next mansion, we travel all the way from British Columbia, Canada to Norfolk, England. Not many ghost stories have photographic proof, but that's just what a country life photographer captured in September 1936. The ghost whose image was captured by the photographer was that of Lady Dorothy Walpole, or the Brown Lady of Raynham, as she is known. She lived there in the 18th century, and like many ghosts, she has a tragic backstory with unfinished business that caused her to continue to roam the hallways of her home even after her death. Raynham Hall was built in the 1600s. It was known for having intricate architecture and an extensive art collection. Paladin architect William Kent later expanded the house. During this period, the mansion's owner was Charles, the 2nd Viscount Townshend. Lady Dorothy Walpole, who was the sister of Robert Walpole, England's first Prime Minister, entered the picture when she married the 2nd Viscount Townshend in 1713. However, the marriage was an unhappy one. There were many rumors that Lady Dorothy was unfaithful to the 2nd Viscount, and that he was also unhappy with her lavish spending habits. He was allegedly so enraged by her cheating that he locked her up in Raynham Hall in 1725. Not only that, but he told people she was dead and even had a fake funeral. One can only imagine how miserable her life must have been. Stuck in an unhappy marriage, the world thinking you're dead, and you're unable to be with the person you love, and you're trapped in this hall with no one to speak to. She lived for about a year like that, before she supposedly passed away in 1726 from smallpox. However, there are many questions surrounding her death. Many people believe she continues to roam the hallways of Raynham Hall. There have been several notable sightings. One was from a Christmas party in 1835 by Madge Loftus. He claims to have seen her in a brown dress in the hallway. The sight was confirmed by another person who said he saw a ghost turn around and face them. When she turned, she didn't have eyes. Instead, there were hollowed out circles where her eyes should have been. In 1836, a friend of the famous author Charles Dickens, Captain Frederick Marryat, visited Raynham Hall. He went specifically to refute the claims that Lady Dorothy haunted Raynham Hall. However, instead of being able to confirm his theory that ghosts don't exist, he encountered the ghost. Not only that, but he also tried to shoot her. The bullet went right through her, since she was a ghost. Another famous sighting was from Gladys Southard's son, someone we'll discuss momentarily, in 1926. He claims to have seen her in the hallway, not realizing exactly who she was. He then saw a portrait of her and realized the ghost in the hallway was the same woman in the portrait, Lady Dorothy. In 1899, John Townsend, 6 Marquis Townshend, inherited Raynham Hall. The property, while still impressive, had fallen on hard times. While John Marquis Townshend was lucky enough to inherit the estate, he was unlucky to find out that the estate was bankrupt. He had a few courses of action to take, namely sell the extensive and impressive art collection and marry a rich woman. The lucky pile of money, we mean woman, was Gladys Southard. As we previously mentioned, her son saw Lady Dorothy's ghost. Townsend and Southards married in 1905, but unfortunately, the marriage didn't last long, as the sixth Marquis died in 1921. This left Southard to bring Raynham Hall back to its past glory. She did this by writing a book called True Ghost Stories, which was published in 1936. She used the stories of the sightings of Lady Dorothy as the first of 23 stories in the collection. The book brought attention to the mansion, its architecture, and its history, while using the ghost stories as a form of marketing element to generate interest. And it went well, as interest in the mansion surged following the publication. But we don't know if that's what Lady Dorothy would have wanted. We think she honestly just wants to leave. Number 1. Lemp House. The last house on our list is a reminder that while everything may look perfect on the outside, that's not always the case for what's occurring on the inside. The story of Lemp House begins in Schweg, Germany. Johann am Lemp left Germany for the United States in the 1830s. He arrived in St. Louis, Missouri, the new city he would call home. Upon arrival, Johann Adam opened a grocery store where he sold his homemade beer. People really liked his beer, and it became so popular that he built a brewery in 1840. The brewery experienced its own popularity, and Lemp's Western Brewery Company became a successful and profitable business. Now is a good time to note that Prohibition doesn't become law until 1919. We promise this will become important later. Johann Adam Lemp passed away on August 25, 1862. His son, William, inherited the brewery. In 1864, he expanded the brewery. It became the size of 5 city blocks. Soon after, William purchased the house at 3322 South 13th Street. It was a huge Victorian-style mansion with 33 rooms. It was complete with a basement and an attic. William and his wife, Julia, moved in. They and their 6 children lived in the mansion. The mansion was close to the brewery, so it not only served as a home, but also had an office space for William. The mansion was so close to the brewery that a tunnel was built connecting the brewery to the basement of the mansion. There was also a cave that was originally used for refrigeration purposes for the brewery. However, after technological advances in refrigeration, the cave was renovated to make an auditorium, a swimming pool, and a bowling alley, among other luxuries. Clearly, William was enjoying a high level of success. With Prohibition still decades away, the Lemp family was able to live a perfect and lavish lifestyle. That is, until 1901. Tragically, Frederick Lemp, William's son, and favorite at that, died at age 28. He had heart problems. William took the death of his son very hard. Not only was Frederick his favorite, but he also hoped that Frederick would eventually take over the business. It soon became clear to everyone that William had difficulty reconciling that his son was dead, and he began to retreat from public life. To compound William's suffering, his friend, Frederick Pabst, passed away on January 1, 1904. This seemed to be too much for William to bear, and on February 13, 1904, William died by suicide, shooting himself in the head. We're sad to say that this family's tragedies would not end there. William Lemp Jr., who was also referred to as Billy, and whom we'll continue to refer to as Billy so as not to confuse him with William Lemp Sr., took over the business. Billy married his wife, Lillian, in 1899. Together, they had one child, William J. Lemp III. We couldn't find a nickname for him, so we'll just go with William J. William J. was born on September 26, 1900. To say that Billy and Lillian enjoyed the fruits of Billy's father and grandfather's labors is an understatement. They spent money lavishly, and they were involved in the St. Louis social scene. Lillian became known as the Lavender Lady, as she loved the color and wore it often. However, much like the theme of this family, All that seemed perfect to the public was not perfect in private. Billy and Lillian's marriage was suffering. Initially, Billy saw Lillian as a trophy wife, but over time, he began to participate in activities that excluded her at best and were unfaithful to her at worst. He began to have parties in the caves, complete with alcohol and sex workers. To keep Lillian busy, he gave her $1,000 a day to spend and told her she was required to spend it completely. In 2023, that would have been over $30,000 a day. In hindsight, this wasn't a great financial decision, because after all, Prohibition was coming. Billy and Lillian ended up divorcing in 1908. While Billy's illicit activities were to blame, it seemed that the final straw was when Billy had a son with another woman. The divorce trial was a scandal and of interest to many in the community. Now, there is no record of the boy's existence, and living relatives say that there is no truth to the speculation that a child was ever born. However, the rumor was that this young boy existed and had Down syndrome and was horrifyingly left to live in the attic his entire life. To make matters worse, if that's even possible, he was referred to in the research as having the nickname Monkey Face Boy. Billy's luck didn't get much better after his divorce. In 1906, the business began to suffer when 9 breweries came together to form the Independent Breweries Company. And his mother passed away from cancer. Billy, who didn't have the business acumen of his father and grandfather, decided this was the time to remodel the mansion. This was in 1911, 8 years before Prohibition. Even though he was paying attention to the mansion, adding some offices there for the brewery, he paid less attention to the equipment and technology at the brewery. He ended up building a country home and remarrying in 1915 to a woman named Allie Lindbergh. Yes, 4 years before Prohibition. Okay, and now it's time to discuss Prohibition. In 1919, Prohibition became law in the United States. That made the selling and production of alcohol illegal. That's not great news if you own a brewery. Many of the employees found out that they were out of job when they arrived at work to find the doors and gates locked. A year after Prohibition and the brewery closing, another member of the Lemp family died by suicide. On March 20th, 1920, also Lemp Wright, William's sister, took her own life with a gun. She had suffered in a bad marriage and went through a divorce in 1918. While it seemed like the relationship was on the mend, as she and her estranged husband reconciled in 1920, she took her own life only a month later. Her death did not, however, occur at Lemp House. As we said, not everything is as it seems. And sadly, not long after Elsa's death, another member of the Lemp family died by suicide. This time, it was Billy himself. He had become depressed over losing the business and withdrew from public life. He shot himself on December 29, 1922, 2 years after his sister. He took his life in the same building as his father did, inside Lemp House. William's son, William J. Lemp III, died at the age of 42. He died of a heart attack. The Lemp family seems to have been stalked by tragedy. Charles, one of the remaining siblings of the Lemp family, moved into the Lemp mansion in 1929. He moved in with a few people and allegedly lived with Billy's illegitimate son. The illegitimate son, again, who has no records and therefore no name, allegedly passed away in his 30s. The only identifier of his life is a flat stone on his grave that simply says, Lemp. And we're sorry to say, but tragedy did not stop there. Charles, the sibling who took over the mansion, died by suicide and was found on May 10, 1949, on the second floor of the mansion. He had shot his dog before turning the gun on himself. Of William Sr.'s 6 children, 1 died tragically at 28, 3 took their own lives, and 2 died of natural causes. Those 2 are Louis Lemp in 1931 and Edwin Lemp in 1970. Before Edward's death, he requested that his family's paintings, documents, and artifacts be burned. So the Lemp family saw so much success from the humble beginnings of a German immigrant. With his success, they saw so many family members die before their time. It's no wonder the Lemp House is haunted. The mansion became a boarding house in 1949. This seems to be where the ghostly sightings began. People report knocking sounds and footsteps. While the mansion was poorly maintained, the owners also had difficulty finding anyone who wanted to board there when rumors of the hauntings became known. The mansion fell into disrepair until 1975, when Dick Pointer purchased and renovated the property and converted it into a restaurant and inn. But it appears the ghost didn't like the changes. Many workers quit because they heard sounds, saw ghosts, items went missing, and people felt as though they were being watched. Not only that, but the piano would play by itself, the glasses on the bar would go flying, the lights would turn on and off, and the dresser would open and close. Once a candle lit all on its own. Many believe that the ghost of Billy's illegitimate son haunts the attic. People looking up from the street report seeing a face looking out the window. Someone said they saw a ghost of a boy asking for someone to play. Also, people would leave toys in the attic, only to find them in different locations when they returned. And it would seem that the womanizer, Billy, also had unfinished business in the mansion. Women who used the restroom, which was previously Billy's personal area, said that they saw a man peek into the stalls. Those who stayed in William Lemp's senior's room reported hearing someone run up the stairs and kick the door. It seems that Billy ran up the stairs and tried to kick the door in after his father took his own life. On the outside, the Lemp House was a symbol of success, prosperity, and hard work. The perfect image of the family to the outside world was a facade that hid a tragic and heartbreaking family history. The ghosts who haunt Lemp House seem to continue to roam, perhaps in search of their own happy endings. Who knows if they will ever find them. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.